Juan Carlos, how are you?
How are you, Rob?
Was it JC Polanco?
JC Polanco.
Oh yeah. This the.
A mí me gusta Juan Carlos.
That's
pero
the
no
alter.
Juan,
that's
no
the
Juan.
that's the alter ego. JC.
No, the alter ego is Lenny Kravitz.
No.
You know that.
No, I could see the resemblance.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
He'll play me in my biopic.
That's right. I see the resemblance. You guys are. Yeah, you're right. They asked for autographs when you came. No, but JC, let's start at the weekend, man. Lots happening.
Oh yeah.
Lots happening, and I'm happy you're here because you wear two hats. Not only are you a political analyst, but you're also an attorney.
Yeah.
So I get the best of both worlds, right? You can give me the political perspective and just the legal perspective.
I try.
Let's start with the mayor's senior advisor, and I want two things. What you think? Obviously, that means the legal implications. And what are the political implications,
yeah,
right?
I'm so happy you said that, Rob, because there's several courts, right? There's the court of public opinion, there's a court of law, and the court of politics, and they're not always the same. So let me put my attorney hat for a second. I think that as New Yorkers, we have to remind ourselves that there is due process, and that we want due process if it's us. We respect due process. It's the system that we live under, and not only the mayor, but everyone who's been alleged to have committed a crime, everyone who's been accused formally in an indictment is entitled to the presumption of innocence and an opportunity to go to court and be able to defend themselves. Obviously, the burden is in the federal government and in the city government to prove their charges. That's true. But we do want to give them an opportunity to defend themselves. So let's make sure we always think along those lines. That's why it shocked me to hear people demand that the mayor resign when he got indicted. I'm like, give the man a chance to at least go to court and be able to make his case as to why these charges aren't true. And I know the burden is on the federal government, but there's an opportunity for him to defend himself. So that's the legal answer. The political answer is that this is terrible. I mean, if you are a Democrat thinking of citywide office and you've announced your candidacy to run against the mayor, this is just yet another bullet in that gun of yours to be able to say another little bit of ammunition for you. So I'm just upset at the fact that, and this is where I've said it before and I'll say it again, I'm upset that people have put themselves in the position where an accusation like this could be made. Does that make sense? It bothers me because these are people that have dedicated their lives to public service. I mean, some folks, they give the senior advisor 30 years of her life to public service. Put yourself in this position where you have to explain why these things are happening. It sucks. And it really, I've seen a lot of people around the mayor who have been accused, who are going to be given their opportunity. But putting yourself in a position like that where your reputation is now questioned sucks. And then lastly, you got to remember that we're a city that we're very different than the rest. So an accusation like this, we're looking like you're automatically guilty, you're accused, and we want you out. And you can see it in the poll numbers. So a lot of the folks that are running for mayor right now are really energized by every negative news that comes out of City Hall.
Now let's talk about the mayor situation, and his attorney is essentially telling the feds, based on my interpretation, but I'm not a lawyer, that's why I'm asking you, that where's the beef? Mm-hmm. Where's the superseding indictment? Mm-hmm. Calling the bluff of the feds, mm-hmm. right? Saying, where is it? What are we saying, right? Can we move this along? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a genius move on behalf of the mayor's attorneys to say, let's hurry up and get this done. You're wasting our time, right? We want to get this done. We want to be able to, my client needs to focus on his reelection campaign. And this cloud hanging over him is hurting his chances of getting public matching funds. It's hurting his donations. People think he's guilty. Could we hurry this things up? Genius move. And quite frankly, it puts the onus on the federal government to, show up. Put up or shut up. Let's get this done. What do you got? And what's been happening, and I've noticed that in the defense of the mayor, some of the tactics by the defense attorney and those that are responsible for the public relations of it, including with some help even from the president-elect, has been, you're indicting the city mayor because he got an upgraded plane? Give me a break. Are you kidding me? It diminishes the charge. It puts it in the perspective of you just coming after the guy. So I think it's a brilliant move by the federal defense attorney. Now, I got to tell you, some may disagree, but I've always believed strongly in the idea of being forceful in your defense, being loud about your defense, and challenging those that are accusing you to bring the goods, that you're not afraid. And that's one thing that I appreciate in the strategy that I've seen so far of the mayor's defense team.
What do you make of the situation now with the NYPD, the latest story to break over the weekend?
It's terrible.
But
I mean, how do you do that? And the fact that he resigned so fast. I mean, that's another thing. We're not dumb. New York City sees the resignation, and we don't have to now discuss that it happened. We know it happened. You can't convince me otherwise that the exchange for overtime for sexual favors didn't happen. Shame on the former chief of police for doing that. And quite frankly, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear any defense coming out of there. The fact that he put people in this position is terrible to me, and it's just indicative of what I've been saying. You have people around you that you trust that have put themselves in this position. I mean, this is more ammunition for your political enemies to come after you. And think about the women that were put in this position. My heart breaks for them. Imagine you're a hardworking police officer. You want to make sure you're doing a good job for the city, and you're told that this is what you have to do in order to get the overtime. Shameful.
What are your thoughts? Does this smell of the French Connection or Serpico or something of that nature, based on what you're seeing so far and reading?
I don't know if Serpico. I love that movie, and I love the character that Al Pacino played. I don't know if it's that. I do know this. I do know that there seems to be an organic whistleblower of some kind, if you will, right? Something along the lines of where I can see it coming from many places. I'll give you an example of what I mean. We saw a small business owner out of Brooklyn say, "I'm getting shook down for money and police stuff," right? It reminds me of Serpico, if you recall. You were seeing another guy say, "Hey, do me some sexual favors for overtime," and it's what's going on here? Then we start studying more and more of the cover-up, so it's getting really messy. So I don't know if there's one whistleblower, two whistleblower, three whistleblowers, but there's a spirit of that's coming out right now that's demanding that there be changes, and the way that some of these leaders are treating the people that they work for.
What do you make of the field? There's also the other thing I want you opine on is the matching funds, saying that there's a potential that the mayor may have to give back $10 million.
I think that should be, you can pause it, you could put it in escrow, you can wait, you could demand to see more evidence, but the board has a job to do. And those board members work very hard to make sure they do a good job. So I want to make sure that I'm respectful. So their job is to make sure that our money as city taxpayers is being given appropriately, ethically, and ensuring that the candidates that are getting it are doing what they're supposed to do. So thank you for your service. Simultaneously, there's an accusation made. It's an accusation. It's not a conviction. We have to be very careful on when we act on accusations. It's just a fact. Some people may disagree with me on that, and that's fine. But unless I see a conviction, I don't want to hear that you're going to do this to someone. Let's wait till there's a conviction, because as of right now, it's a mere accusation. Now, you're not entitled to campaign finance, matching funds. It's not an entitlement. The board has to see several things that they feel confident in your filings, that they believe that there's a credible race, even that the money's being spent appropriately. They have a job to do, but if the basis for withholding is the indictment, we have to be very careful, because it'll hurt the mayor's chances in his reelection. And think about this: what if the trial comes, he's found not guilty after all the evidence is in, and then you took this man, you didn't give him the matching funds? It may be an irreparable harm that's done to his campaign. So I think about those things, and I want to know, how do you balance the fact that you're concerned about giving this money because of some unethical issues and an accusation, and the fact that it will have incredible harm to his campaign if it doesn't, if it comes out that these accusations weren't true. So I don't know whether the money should be in escrow. I don't know whether or not. I just don't have the answer, and I think that we'll have a better picture once there's a trial in place.
Well, Carlos, talk about the pretenders, contenders for the mayoralty, people interested in being the next mayor, potentially, or challenging the current mayor. Who has impressed you so far? Give me your thoughts on the different folks that have put their hat in the ring.
You mean aside from the current mayor?
Yeah, aside from the current mayor.
From the current mayor.
Who said he's running for re-election. So.
Yeah, so aside from the current mayor, I would have to tell you that it's the toughest job on earth, in my opinion. I know that people say the president, but I think, man, being mayor of New York City, there's nothing like it. Next to being first baseman for the New York Yankees, obviously, right? I would think it's probably the best job ever, no? You don't think? No. Oh, you're a Mets guy. I forgot.
No, it doesn't matter.
I forgot.
It has nothing to do with that.
So You got to say Scott Stringer, being a former citywide official, has a very good shot. I don't know if you saw his interview on Channel 2 with Marsha Kramer.
Yeah, I did see that.
I think he did very well. I think some answers were a little off base. I think he may want to maybe do a mulligan,
What,
if you will.
on migrants?
On the migrant issue. I think the idea that you don't want to deport the criminal element, and like what? Do your time and then deport. I mean, come on. And I think Scott Stringer, if you gave him a mulligan, he can reconsider that. But when you talk about experience, being able to connect with various groups of people, I think Scott Stringer is probably one of the more formidable candidates in the primary, in the Democratic primary. I think that you take a look at someone like Senator Ramos. I think she's very popular with some folks, especially some union folks. I like Senator Ramos personally. I think that personally she's a hard worker. She cares deeply about her community. I have a big issue, and I think she knows that with some of my posts, with her position on Judge Lasalle. That really broke my heart. But I think it'll be interesting to see a Latina running for mayor and see what she can do. I would like to see her address that attack on Senator Lasalle. It's a hard one for me. It's a tough pill for me to swallow. But when you take a look at the other Democrats running for mayor of New York City, I think that Scott Stringer's experience puts him in a position where he's the more formidable candidate to be able to face off against a guy like Eric Adams. On the Republican side, it's interesting. You don't have any announced candidates right now. I know Curtis Lee was running again. He mentioned running again, or perhaps maybe running again. I think guys like Joe Borelli, a friend of mine, I think that he'd be a formidable mayoral candidate on the Republican side. Smart guy, and I think he's able to connect with a lot of different constituencies across New York City. So it'd be an interesting election cycle, assuming that the mayor's not in. And then obviously, there's a lot of talk of Mayor, former Governor Cuomo, putting his hat in the ring. What's interesting is that he shares a lot of the same voters that the mayor does, right? You have centrist voters, homeowner voters, outer borough voters, Black and Latino voters that like the former governor. So he's a formidable candidate, I think. If you think about it, I think that one of the things that he's doing now is going to be interesting. The fact that he's suing one of his accusers for defamation. It's interesting because then you'll be able to, in a defamation lawsuit, you're putting yourself out there to be able to look at the evidence, and that may absolve him from some of the accusations that were made against him in the past, if he actually carries out these things and sues and is able to show the evidence to the city that he was misaligned and it wasn't the right thing, maybe. But I think that's it. That's my take.
What's your prediction? You think former Governor Cuomo runs?
I think former Governor Cuomo runs if Mayor Adams is not in, because they share the same voters. Rob, it's tough.
How about Jumaane Williams, public advocate Jumaane Williams?
I haven't heard that he announced. He's running for re-election.
I'm just saying. What do you think? Do you think he runs? Do you think he waits it out? Do you think?
He's a good friend of mine. I like him a great deal. Our politics are opposite. He knows that, right? Yeah. Our politics could not be further apart. But he's a good dude. I like him a lot, and I think that he's a citywide official. He's able to connect with a lot of voters. I think, because I know him personally, I think people will be shocked to know that he's a lot more, he's a lot more moderate than people would like to think. And you would only get that opportunity if you hear him on other issues. I know there's some issues that him and I would never agree on. But I know that he's ethical, he's smart, he has a lot of experience, and he's able to connect with a lot of different constituencies. In a ranked choice voting primary like we have in New York City, if you look at Jumaane throwing his hat in the ring, I can see the progressives across New York City line up behind him. And if they're smart, if the far left that I don't agree with on anything, if they're smart about this and line up behind his candidacy, then you would have an ideological ranked choice vote between a Scott Stringer candidacy and a Jumaane Williams candidacy in New York City. It'd be an interesting one. That's assuming that the mayor's not running. That's the presumption, right?
How about the comptroller's race?
Oh, what's there to talk about? Mark Levine all the way.
Why?
Mark Levine is phenomenal. I love Mark Levine. Mark Levine is a hard worker. Mark Levine, I know that people would say, does he have the experience to be the controller? This is the question that you have to ask yourself. The controller is not the accountant doing the work. The controller is the individual with the vision for the office. The individual that's able to connect with the various different groups across New York City, the various different organizations, constituencies across New York City. And Mark Levine is it. Mark Levine is Manhattan Borough President. Mark Levine is fluent in Spanish. Mark Levine is personable. Mark Levine has a vision, I think, that is going to be able to do the ethical job that we require from a controller, which is, can you make sure that the city's funds are being spent ethically? I don't think you have a question on Mark Levine.
What don't Brandon and Raj Kumar bring to the table?
Well, listen, I think...
Brandon's finance chair in the city council.
Damn, you know what?
He's proven a foil, right, to the administration in terms of the money,
I gotta be honest
in terms of the budget, in terms of what the city said on migrant spending.
Hold up. Mark Levine is a good friend of mine, but so is Justin Brennan. And I was reading so much about Mark Levine this whole time, and I didn't mention Justin Brennan. Justin Brennan would also make an incredible candidate for controller, period, hands down.
He is a candidate.
No, would make a phenomenal controller,
okay.
Period, full stop. There's nothing to talk about. I mean, I don't have anything at all wrong to say about him. Another candidate with insight to city financing. Another candidate that's able to connect with the various groups across the city. And I think another candidate that you won't have any ethical questions as to how the money is being spent. The Assemblywoman, I'm sure, is a good person. I don't think that from the Assembly you have the vision to be controller. I don't think she has the experience to... I mean, again, I'm sure that she'll see me one day and be upset that she heard this from me. I don't have any ill will towards her at all. I mean, at all, zero. But when I think about the city controller, I want someone who has had the kind of experience that Mark Levine and Justin Brennan have had.
Question.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. JC, question for you. What missteps has the governor taken, in your opinion, that would open her up to potential challenges or, like Congressmember Richie Torres, Lieutenant Governor Delgado, Congressmember Michael Lawler? Why do people see vulnerability? Obviously, separate from the polls. What do you think has created this element in terms of Governor Hochul?
I think that there's been a universal anti-incumbent mood across the country. She happens to be the incumbent. She came in under Cuomo. She's often seen as being fruit of the poisonous tree, if you will, with many Democratic circles. And it's been tough because if you're the governor of New York, you're herding cats across the state, right? You might as well be governor of 3 different states. There's a governor of Western New York, there's a governor of upstate, there's a governor of downstate, and you're all 3 governors at once. It's like the holy trinity of New York government, right? It's very difficult, man. And the idea that people are going to come and challenge you is something you should expect. And New York State politics is rough and tumble. It's tough politics. And I think that there are some things that she's done which have made her vulnerable. One of the things I think she's done is I think about the congestion pricing issue. The congestion pricing issue is a tough one. First you go back on congestion pricing and you think about how that impacted her with some of the progressives in New York State that you have to herd, right? One of the many groups that you have to herd as governor of New York. And then you think about her going back on it right after the election. And I'm thinking to myself, how is Pat Ryan going to handle that? How in the world does Congresswoman Gillen handle that now? How in the world do suburban New York City voters deal with the fact that when you come into New York City, you're going to have to pay this toll? And what a mistake it was for her to go back on it. I'm a firm believer that congestion pricing is a mistake. Charging New Yorkers another $1 is a mistake. You put yourself in a position where you just won some purple districts in Long Island and in the northern parts of the radius of folks that come to New York City, and you're telling them they're going to have to pay more to come to New York City. I think it's a big mistake. You should be thinking about, what do the Congress people in those areas want? What is it that the constituencies in those areas want? They don't want you to charge them more money to live in New York, and charging that congestion pricing is a mistake. And it's going to cost her with a lot of the voters that she needs to vote for her in the future. So the back and forth of congestion pricing is a mistake. And I think it's going to cost her. And it's going to cost some of the Democrats that won these purple districts. I think Democrats make a mistake when they don't listen to purple district Democrats.
Delgado and Richie Torres making or flirting with the potential that they may run against the governor. Is it a fool's errand? Do you think it's wise and prudent to do so?
I think it's a mistake. I love Richie Torres because he's my member of Congress. I like his positions on a lot of things. He seems to be more of a centrist. I'm a centrist, so I appreciate that a great deal. But how you do this matters, because she is still the governor of New York and she has a lot of support. She has a lot of power. How do you, within the confines of realizing that this is a much bigger jurisdiction than just a congressional district, how do you do it so that you're not offending the different groups that you're going to need in a primary? It's a tough thing to do. And I don't know whether Delgado is going to announce that he's going to primary the governor that put him on the map as lieutenant governor. I don't think he's announced, and I think it'd be tough for him to do that. I think there's a better way to do this. If you are Delgado, there's a better way to do this, and that's by going on a listening tour of the district, of the state. It's by understanding that there's different Democratic organizations across the state. How many of those are supporting the Democratic governor? How many of them are you offending by some of the things that you're doing? I don't know if it's the right tact. I would think about the fact that you're going to need a lot more constituencies outside of New York City, and I would be very careful on how to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Juan Carlos, let's talk about the Latino issue in terms of electing a Latino citywide or statewide, or what the outcome. I mean, there's multiple questions in one, but I want you to cover the different bases. And Michael Benjamin gave me some. He thinks Fernando Ferrer was the last best chance Latinos had on electing someone citywide. But I want you to explain to me why.
Well, I was the second best. I was the second best.
Okay, so then please, why are we waiting? Why are we leaning on jobs that are not decided at the polls? Right, city council speaker, secretary of state.
It's a problem. Man.
Those are not jobs that you win by popular. I'm sorry. I'm like, this is.
I'm really angry.
The numbers dictate something that you can legitimately say, hey, I ran and won.
Can I talk about
it gets me a little upset when we're banking on things like that for power.
Well, this is a really tough question. I teach Latino studies at BMCC at CUNY, and this is the topic that I really am passionate about. I am the first Dominican American to ever run citywide on a major party ticket. I got crushed, but I do have that record, so I want to make sure I say that. But I do want to say that. So the best chance, and I'm going to push back a little bit on something you said there, because there is some strength in some of these appointments, Rob. I think that our opportunity to have Hector LaSalle as Chief Justice of the Court of Appeals in New York as an attorney, I got to tell you, meant a lot to me. Seeing a guy go through the ranks, work very hard, come from nothing to make it to an opportunity to be the head of one of the branches of our state government, to me means a great deal. And I saw what they did to him. LaSalle.
I'm not gonna agree with you there.
You don't have to agree with me.
I'm saying, but I want to push back on that as well.
It means a great deal to us.
I'm not saying it didn't mean a great deal. What I'm saying is we're still beholden to someone else making the decision.
No, I said that.
And there's an argument to be made for other ethnic groups would not have received the same treatment, or they would have made a major problem.
Oh my God!
That would have gotten nuked. I'm just saying, but that speaks to lack of power.
Roberto, yeah, no, I know, but I mean, what happened to LaSalle is indicative of the argument that I'm going to make now. The fact that this happened to him, and I want to say something. Can I, Roberto?
Please don't say what you say. The floor is yours.
Roberto, I think about the attacks on LaSalle, and it eats me up alive. Here you have a centrist Democrat who was pro-choice, period, pro-union, period, be lied about. The attacks on him were false, and it pisses me off. And this is why it pisses me off, Roberto, and I'm sorry I'm using that word. When you study the issue as to why the attacks were made against him, these were really hurtful. And I'll tell you what, there was a subpoena. There was a search warrant for one of these pregnancy centers. The search warrant was too overly broad. And as a judge, you want a judge to be able to make sure that any search warrant is in line with the Constitution. And overly broad warrants and search warrants are not constitutional. So the fact that he says, you're going to do a search warrant, I need it to be more tailored as to time and space and what you're looking for. That became an argument that he was pro-life. Bull, S-H-I-T. He's not. You want a jurist to be able to do something like that. You want him to be able to do that. On the union factor, if you are conducting yourself in a manner that has nothing to do with the fact that you are a member of a union and you're on a web conference, and the fact that you're doing something that's non-union related, the fact that you're a member of the union, you may be acting as a member of a union and you're doing something that is non-union related, and because you take a different position on a question, that makes you anti-union, so that's going to be the ammunition you need to tank the first Latino ever to be nominated to be the Chief Justice of Court of Appeals. Shameful on anyone who did that. So I'm angry about that. But what is the issue? The issue is that it's easy to do that to Latinos. That would have never happened to any other group, Roberto.
Exactly.
Roberto, the gentleman that got named, and I want to be very respectful. I'm an attorney. I'm very respectful of the Chief Justice. Thank you for your service to the state, period. But however, when you take a look and examine some of the issues that he had in his background, letting off someone as a judge, letting off someone who had been accused of wrongdoing because it had not been done timely, then I say to myself, where is the sanity behind who you support and who you don't support?
I love the passion, Juan Carlos.
I'm angry.
Saying the same thing. Why?
No, I tell you what.
Why?
I tell you what.
Why can't we get it? Okay.
No. You said I could have the floor, Roberto.
Yeah. Okay.
Roberto, when I take a look at all of the immigrant groups that have arrived and all of the new groups in New York, I take a look at the Germans, I take a look at the English, I take a look at the Jews, I take a look at the Italians, the Irish. When you take a look at the Asian Americans, every one of those groups coming into New York have had the opportunity to see real social mobility up the ranks in politics. And I mean getting citywide elected officials. Okay. And I mean winning statewide. We've seen it. Okay. And even today, I sit there and I admire, and this is not because we don't agree politically on everything, but I take a look at the African Americans and Caribbean blacks in New York, and I admire their tenacity and their contributions to New York and their ability to succeed in New York politics. And you said I can have the floor, so let me walk you through this. Okay. Look at the Speaker of the City Council, African American, Black American. I look at the Mayor of New York City, Black American. I look at the Speaker of the State Assembly. I take a look at the Public Advocate of the City of New York. I take a look at our Attorney General of the City of New York. I take a look at our Lieutenant Governor of the City of New York. I take a look at the Senate Majority Leader, President Pro Tem of the City of New York. And I see the incredible successes of African American blacks and Black Caribbeans. And it's just amazing to me. And in terms of why don't Latinos have the same? And I think a lot of it has to do with the internal politics of the Democratic Party. I think that the Democratic Party has seen the Latino vote and has seen us as perhaps the bridesmaid and never the bride, perhaps as someone that could be the supporting character but never the actual main character, and it bothers me. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that Latinos have overwhelmingly continued to vote Democratic regardless. One of the many reasons I was a Republican for so long was because I saw this. I saw the lack of mobility of the political ranks in the Democratic Party. One of the many reasons that I spent a long time as a Republican. I'm no longer a Republican, as you know, Rob. But I said to myself, what is it about the Latinos in Florida? What is it about the Latino in California and in Texas? They got to see U.S. senators. They got to see governors. They got to see presidential candidates. And I saw that they were able to split their ticket. I saw that they were able to vote Democrat and Republican and forced other people to woo them. And you had to come to them. You had to go to the Miami Cubans and say, hey, what is it that you need? Because they'll split their ticket quick. They'll vote Democrat and Republican. You have to woo them. And I saw that often in New York. It was almost 90% of the time. You knew that they were going to vote for you no matter what. So I said to myself, what is it about the fact that we don't have? Why is it that we don't have? Why is it? And I think a lot of it has to do that the Latino vote in New York has to realize that you have to respect their vote. You have to respect them. You just can't take them for granted. You just can't depend on them to be supporting characters. So what they did to La Salle is an extension of that. We're going to do this to you because we can. Here you go. Shameful. So how do we get a citywide official here? First, as opposed to other groups, we're very divided based on our nationality. That's an issue. The fact that we hide behind, not the fact that we're Latinos and we have a unique lowest common denominator that unites us, and that could be language, religion, or the origin of what happened in 1492 with the three different groups coming together. Normally we hide behind, oh, you're Ecuadorian, or you're Puerto Rican, or you're Colombian, oh, you're Dominican, or you're this, or you're that. And that division is something that is difficult for us to somehow forget about, something that our African-American brothers and sisters don't have to deal with. And a lot of Italians don't have to, they don't divide about, you're from Sicily, or you're from the mainland. They don't deal with that issue. Or the Jews in New York, oh, you're Sephardic. Or they don't break along those lines when it comes to politics. So there's a lot of unity in other ethnic immigrant and new groups to New York. And they're able to coalesce a lot easier than Latinos can. I think that's a big deal. And I think that if we recognize that, we'd be better off if we said to ourselves, we got to stop that nonsense. And if we want someone from our community to get elected, let's support that individual and let's make it happen. Do they care about the issues that we care about? Whether, the economic development, crime, jobs, education, do they care about those issues? And how important is it for us to be able at this moment in history to line up behind someone to make him the first? Are we past that? It could be, Roberto, that it no longer matters. It could be that we're at a time in history where whether or not you elect someone from your group is not as important as it once was. That's okay. But we have to where are we in that spectrum? Because it's time for the Latino vote to be respected. And I think that we can win citywide officials. We can do it, but it's going to require there to be an individual that's going to be able to connect with all the various groups across New York. And as I take a look now, I'm thinking that it could be a guy like Eric Gonzalez. Eric Gonzalez, the district attorney out of Brooklyn, there's no reason in this universe why no one's talking about him as being a potential mayoral candidate. Why? Why not? You're the district attorney of the largest county in the United States of America, bigger than a majority of states across the union. I mean, give me a break. The kind of work that he's doing, even the work that he's doing on wrongful convictions is something that we should admire. Why are we talking about Eric Gonzalez?
Name three Latinos that have juice power.
Adriano Espaillat, incredible juice and power, in my opinion.
Why? How is
the
he
first Dominican American?
How is that? No.
That's important.
How has he demonstrated?
How has he
demonstrated his power?
He's demonstrated his power. I think that when you take out, I'll tell you, you're not giving me an opportunity, Roberto. Roberto, when you take a look at the political power that he's created for the Dominican community, and the way that that power now has translated into the Puerto Rican and African American community throughout the Bronx and throughout Manhattan. He's made himself a national figure as the chair of the Hispanic caucus in Congress. That's a big deal, Roberto.
Okay.
And you could put him on the map. I think that his ability to work with different groups throughout the city make him a formidable candidate. And I think that I got to see how he's going to, continue working the relationships throughout Harlem. I got to see him more work in the relationship with the blacks that are across New York. In Harlem, I think that's important. If he continues working those relationships, I think that's going to make him even a more formidable candidate. I take a look at, like I mentioned, Eric Gonzalez. I think
they don't have to be elected, by the way.
They don't have to be elected.
No, it could be just Latino political forces.
I think Eric Gonzalez is someone that we have to recognize as a force. A force of nature, and that we have to deal with, and I think that's a big deal. I think JC Polanco is a huge deal. He's an independent voice. He's not elected, but man, he's a great looking guy. I think about Roberto. Then you talk about Richie Torres. Richie Torres is doing work. The man not only is he Afro-Latino, but the guy has representing various diverse groups in the Bronx that make him very formidable citywide, if you really think about it. So we do have some. It's a matter of, are they going to be able
How
to...
about in your lifetime, in your life in terms of the political game, name who would you say was overall, throughout the time you've been involved in this business, has been the most impressive, most formidable Latino?
Ruben Diaz Jr. in the Bronx Borough President. I think he would have been phenomenal. Are you kidding? Borough President of the Bronx, former assembly member, had wonderful connections throughout the city, being able to connect with voters of different backgrounds. I think he would have been great. Fernando Ferrer, he was before my time. He's the old school, right? And I know a lot of people loved him. People that I work with a great deal loved him a great deal. I think that many would say Freddie Ferrer would have been the guy, but I think that Ruben Diaz Jr., hands down.
What are Democrats not getting in terms of the national wave, right? Trump. Talk to me. What happened?
What happened?
What happened? How did Kamala? Right, between the Latino vote, right?
Yo, dude. I was crazy. I supported, I was poppies for Kamala. You know that.
Okay. But what happened?
I think what happened was...
where did they miss it?
Well, I think that 100 and somewhat days to run for president is tough. And come on, we gotta admit, that's really hard. Give me a break. You got 100 plus days to run for president of the United States. That's enough. I think that's tough. I think that she was a black woman. I think that was also tough.
Sexism, racism.
I think, it wasn't the overwhelming. Give me a break. I mean, but it was obviously. I think that if we're not able to admit that, it's ridiculous. Because if you think about it, there were some people that she could have been Jesus Christ, and she wouldn't have won this race being Kamala Harris. It's just there were some people that wouldn't have voted for her. And then there's the reality. The switcheroo bothered a lot of folks. The fact that we knew that President Biden was too old to be president. If you're too old to be a cardinal in the Catholic Church, if you're too old to be a judge in New York, you're too old to be president. Come on, you knew that. Democrats should have opened up the primary earlier on. If she would have won the primary then, it would have been great. She would have walked in with more of a mandate and more time. Okay, that's a fact. Now, let's talk about some nitty-gritty stuff. Because we're an evenly divided nation, I think that there are some things that we laugh about here in New York City because we live in an echo chamber. But I think they merit some attention. I think that the migrant crisis was a big mistake. The president made a huge error by opening that border. We have millions of people here who did not come through a point of entry. Did not. And because of that, we don't know who they are. We don't have anything on their backgrounds. We want them to apply for asylum, of which about 80% of those cases are going to be rejected because they don't qualify. In order for you to qualify for asylum, I want a better life. It's not one of the qualifications. And that's tough for people to think about because everybody's stuck on this Ellis Island view of immigration. Stop it. It's a whole new day. Read the asylum laws and see that in order for you to qualify for asylum, you have to qualify for political persecution and all these other things that a lot of these folks that are here are not qualified for. And we see what's happening. We know that it's costing cities across New York, cities across the country, a lot of money. The infrastructure, we're not ready for that infrastructure. You have places in East Ramapo that have thousands of new students. My God, you don't have enough teachers, bilingual teachers. The pressures on the infrastructure alone are killing folks. They're already paying a lot of money. And how do you deal with that reality? And also in New York City, we don't have the money to be able to continue housing people at hotels and feeding people and providing all the things of this influx. So we saw it. It bothered a lot of people. It bothered a lot of people that a lot of these migrants are being cared for more than your New Yorker was. And we saw the inaction when Mayor Adams went, to his credit, to try to get some attention. They wouldn't even meet with him, Rob. So mistake, the migrant crisis. Another mistake was the ignoring the frustration of people at the supermarkets when they saw prices up, talking about Bidenomics and everything is fine. When you take the grand scheme of it, our economy is the best in the world, the best recovery. I got it. I understand that. I teach this stuff. But when you talk to people that are paying a lot more for cream cheese, they want to hear that. They know things are more expensive. And lastly is a more controversial one, and I want some grace from your viewers, if please. I am a strong supporter of LGBT rights, full stop. I believe strongly in the civil rights of the LGBTQ community, full stop. Save your tweets. I'm on your side. Let me finish. You can ask my friend Russell Schaefer. We were in college. I was 100% in favor of marriage equality before it became sexy and everybody thought it was cool because I care deeply about the community. I grew up with so many folks from that community. So my views on this as a Latino coming from the Bronx are much different than some of the other people I grew up with. I was very open-hearted. I understand the struggles of the folks from the LGBTQ community, and I understand their frustrations, and I understand that finally we're seeing some kind of progress, and I'm so excited about that. Let's get that out the way. That's important. Now, where did they drop the ball? I think that the issue of the transgender community is something that the Democrats have to really reckon with, and that's a serious issue. Because how is it that we believe that you can spend $100 million in an ad where Vice President Harris is agreeing to sex reassignment or gender-affirming care for convicted felons, paid for by taxpayers, and think that that's going to bode well across the country? What are you thinking? That doesn't bode well, period, full stop. It doesn't bode well with any groups. It doesn't. It's just ridiculous. The notion, and then this is where it gets really dicey. The fact that I can say all that I said right now about my love for the LGBT community, including, and this is important, The protection of civil rights of the transgender community. It is important to say that there are states where the transgender community could be discriminated against today, where they can be discriminated in employment and in housing. Could you believe that, Roberto? It's 2024. That's okay in some states. Shocks my conscience. Now, how in the world can we protect those transgender rights that we talk about and simultaneously say that transgender women should not compete against biological women in sports and not be castigated as a bigot? How do you make it so that those things could coexist? Because in New York, we may have a different opinion on this issue. Outside of our echo chamber, you want to tell voters in Montana, you want to tell voters in Virginia, and you want to tell voters in New Jersey and across in Long Island, you want to tell them that if you don't support transgender women competing against biological women and biological girls in sports, you're a bigot and you should be shamed and shame on you. It's not going to work. So we have to have a real conversation about the fringe issues that we think are just ridiculous that have a big impact on the vote at the end of the day. Because if a country is so divided, it is these fringe issues that are going to put people to one side and the other. So I think that the Democrats have to have a real conversation about those issues and how do they move forward and not allow for themselves to be painted as radicals, as socialists, as crazies in some places where you're going to need to win some support. So I believe that those are some of the important issues of the day. One of the things that I see the Democrats are doing that is incorrect is that they're moving further to the left. They believe that they lost because they weren't progressive enough. And that's a big mistake. If you think that you won New Jersey by 4 or 5 points because you were not progressive enough, you must be smoking something. Probably sold in my old neighborhood in the 1980s. If you are believing that you need to align yourself more with socialism and that's why you're not winning, you're not listening to the purple state and purple district Democrats that you need to win in order to have the majority in Congress. If you want to speak with Jeffries, you need purple districts. You could put a water bottle to run in AOC's district, and that water bottle will always win if it's a Democrat. You could put a water bottle to run in Richie Torres' district, and that water bottle will win in the November election if it's a Democrat. Now, understanding that there's some districts across the country that it doesn't matter who you are, what you are, if you're a Democrat, you're going to win no matter what. Stop listening to those guys. Start listening to the Pat Ryans. Start listening to the Gillens. Start listening to the Democrats that are winning where Trump won and where it can go either way. Because if you really want a Majority Leader Schumer and a Speaker Jeffries, those are the districts you got to win. And they're telling you that congestion pricing is a problem. They're telling you, hey, biological girls competing against transgender girls and transgender boys is a problem that we got to talk about with love. But we can't just continue shoving this down people's throats. It's not going to work. We can't continue saying, oh, the migrants are just seeking a better way and Mary, Joseph, and Jesus, and that's not going to win you these purple districts. Those purple districts want to hear that you're going to be tough on crime, that you're going to care about their pocketbooks. They want to hear that you're going to bring sanity to government, and they're going to not want to hear that you're tied to the Democratic Socialists of America. So the idea that you're going to have more allegiances to socialism and think that that's how you're going to win, I think you've missed it. You've missed the argument completely. So my advice to Democrats is wake up. You have bigger issues than just outside of New York City. We live in an echo chamber here, and I'd advise you to plan accordingly. And I think you can win some races because I'm one that believes that we'd be better off with Speaker Jeffries.
Juan Carlos, 3 predictions for the new year.
3 predictions for the new year?
Yeah.
It's tough. I think that we're going to be very concerned about autocracy coming out of Washington, D.C. And I think that our system only works when the Congress, the judiciary, and the executive branch all protect their branch with zealous jealousy, if you will, a parochial feel of I got to protect the rights of this branch. And I think that we're seeing less and less of that. I think that the Supreme Court has given up a lot of its authority and a lot of its positioning to the favor of the executive branch. And I think Congress, with the fear of primaries to their own seats, are giving up a lot of their responsibilities of advising consent to the executive branch. So we're going to see a lot more autocracy. We're seeing it now where if you question a nomination, they'll scare you with a primary, and that's no way to run government. I think that's going to be a major issue. I think that you're going to see the press be more and more concerned about lawsuits. So you're going to see a antagonist press towards the executive branch, as opposed, and that's going to be scary. We started seeing that already. We saw it with the Washington Post now wanting to endorse a candidate for for president. I'm sorry. We saw some channels like ABC News settle the This Week lawsuit with the president. We see with Meta donating $1 million to the president's inauguration fund. We saw with Bezos doing the same. So we're seeing more and more of the people that were supposed to be the umpires now starting to wear the jersey or the baseball cap, or even be less aggressive in protecting.
All right, you gave me 2 national predictions. Give me a local one. New York City, New York State.
A local one. I think that Richie Torres announces a primary challenge to the governor. And I think that it's going to be an interesting one. I think he's going to do it early. And I believe that he's carving himself as the centrist candidate in a primary where Democrats across New York are becoming more and more centrist. And I believe that outside of New York City, I'm a centrist and I know centrist politics very well. And I understand that outside of New York City, when you take a look at some of the congressional Democrats that won in the suburbs of New York, and you see the Mike Lawler race in Rockland and northern Westchester, you start seeing Democrats voting for Lawler. You start seeing them vote that way. You start concerning yourself that maybe your messaging is off. And I think that you're going to see a statewide Democratic Party move more towards the middle. And that's going to be interesting. So I can see a November general, either the incumbent governor and or Richie Torres versus Mike Lawler on the Republican side.
Well, Carlos, thank you for your time. Anything you want to add that I forgot to mention to the
conversation?
What?
I wanted to talk. I wish you would have brought up Luigi. I'm angry about that.
Why don't you mention it?
Yeah, I'm concerned about what I see happening in some progressive groups with the admiration for the killer of United Healthcare CEO here in New York City. And I want to say something about that. Is that okay?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you, Roberto. I'm ashamed to see so many people that I know, especially out in social media, applaud this man as if he were a hero, call him sexy because they find him attractive, and doing so under the idea that you are against capitalism and the health insurance industry, and therefore you can understand premeditated murder, which is what it was. And I think about that often. And I wanted to talk, Roberto, if you will, about the various systems that we have and where we don't like those systems. I think about the judicial system and how people don't like the judicial system because it has inefficiencies and it's unfair, right? I think about judges who sentence people to prison unfairly. I think about the death penalty and how it's been misapplied. I think about how Black and Latinos historically have been wrongly convicted and the like. And I think about these things. And that system sucks. So what are we saying now? Is it okay? Is it judge season now? Are you going to be okay with the murder of judges because you don't agree with the system? I think about the elected officials who don't support socialist health care or that don't support Medicare for all. What about those elected officials? Are you applauding the premeditated murder of these people? I have been an attorney on many cases where people on the other side have lost. And as you know, I've done many divorces as an attorney. Many people who are not happy on the other side because they've either lost custody of their kids, they've lost their homes, and I've represented the party that won. Is the family law system one that you don't agree with? Because I can tell you right now, there are a lot of divorce attorneys and family law attorneys that don't agree with the system. You don't agree with that system. Is it open season on divorce attorneys and family law attorneys and family law judges? I think about systems and where do you draw the line for okay on premeditated murder? It's a shame what I'm seeing, and I can't hide behind the racial racial undertones of this. Would he still have fans if the dude was a migrant? Would he have fans if the dude was a black dude named Shaheen Porter, friend of mine? Imagine from the hood, right? Would he have fans if he wasn't good looking? Would he have fans? I think about the moral compass of people. What is wrong with people? I think about also for those of us out there that care deeply about this issue. What if the CEO would have been a black dude, or a black woman, or a Latino or Latina? What if the CEO would have been a mom or a wife instead of just a dad and a husband? Would you be applauding this? Could you believe that there are people right now attacking me on social media because I am totally opposed to this view of creating this man into a hero, into some sort of martyr for the system? It's a real shameful thing I'm watching. And to think that they're elected officials that do the following. They won't come out and say it's wrong, full stop. They'll do things. You have to understand that there are people that have been denied and have died because of health insurance issues. So I understand their frustrations. Can you see how that moral compass is broken? And you can use that same exact, you have to understand. You have to see why for every other system that I've mentioned. And it doesn't stop. We could go down the line of all the systems that we disagree with. We could go down the lines. All those doctors that have committed errors, that have accidentally killed people on the surgical table. Where do you draw the line of premeditated murder? It's shameful what I'm seeing, and I'm seeing a lot. It's a shameful rhetoric coming out of elected officials that, like Pontius Pilate, they wash their hands from taking responsibility of what they say because they'll say this. We just have to understand the frustration. Or as one pundit on television, an author of several books, I won't say his name here because I don't give him publicity, but who said, we understand murder by gun, but what about murder by PDF when you get those healthcare rejections from your insurance companies as a form to appease the anger that people are having because the fact that we are celebrating a murderer? It's shameful, the rationalizing and the nonsense that I'm seeing behind this Luigi guy, and I needed to get that off my chest. So
I
thank you.
appreciate you, Juan Carlos, and hopefully this won't be the last time, and you'll come back soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.